Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 62 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, and a widow of 13 years. I used to live in a quiet town called Bend, Oregon, where the mornings smell like pine and the neighbors wave when they mow their lawns. My life was slow and small, but it was mine. After Richard, my husband of 31 years, passed from a sudden heart attack, I learned to get used to the quiet, or at least I thought I had. The silence after losing someone is different. It doesn't just echo, it lingers. Like steam on a bathroom mirror that never fades. I kept myself busy. I volunteered at the library. I joined a walking group of women named Joan, Bonnie, Carol, you know the type. We all carried some kind of grief in our purses. But nothing filled the gap that Richard left. Nothing filled the space that used to be full of laughter. Arguments about which coffee filter to use. Or him calling out Jeopardy answers from the living room. So when my son Nathan called and said he and his wife Sierra were house hunting in Florida, and their mortgage application had fallen short by just under $200. Ling. I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. I've got it. I told him. Ed holding the phone with one hand and Richard's framed photo with the other. It's your future. Sweetheart. It's what your father would have wanted. He paused just for a beat, then said, Are you sure? As sure as I am that your father would be proud of you. Sierra cried on the phone. She said I was saving their dreams. You'll always have a room with us. Emma. She told me. Always. 2 weeks later, I packed up my life into 3 suitcases. Only took my quilt from the bedroom I had painted yellow 20 years earlier, and flew to Tampa. The sun was too hot. The air too wet. But the house they had found, a big, beautiful 5-bedroom in a gated community called Palm Grove, looked like something out of a real estate catalog. My room was downstairs. Technically the converted laundry room. No closet. A narrow twin bed. A half bathroom with no shower. But I didn't complain. I didn't even flinch. I smiled and told them it was more than enough. After all, I hadn't heard footsteps above my head in years. I hadn't woken up to voices and clinking silverware in a long time. Nathan brought me coffee the first few mornings. Sierra showed me how to work the smart thermostat. Though she sighed every time I asked her to repeat a step, I chalked it up to nerves. Stress? New house tension. One evening, we all had takeout on the back patio. The Florida heat pressed against our backs like a thick towel. But I didn't mind. I felt like I belonged again. Like I had a place. Like I had a family. But I should have known. The things that look like home at first glance, sometimes they're just well-decorated waiting rooms before you're asked to leave. At first, I told myself it was just the adjustment period. New rhythms. New routines. Of course things felt a little off. That's what happens when you mix generations under one roof. But by the second week, it wasn't just awkward glances or forgotten dinners, it was the silence, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. I started noticing the little things. The upstairs fridge where Sierra kept the good groceries suddenly had a keypad lock. Oh, it's just for my meal prep, she said with a laugh, waving it off like it was no big deal. But I noticed the way she looked at my yogurt cups. The ones I'd bought with my own Social Security check. Then the Wi-Fi went down. For 3 days. I couldn't stream Netflix in my little room. Nathan finally told me, casually, that he had moved the router upstairs into his office. Better signal for his Zoom meetings. He said. I didn't argue. I just sat in the quiet, rereading the same chapter of a paperback I never quite finished. Sierra's jokes to her friends got sharper, more pointed. One afternoon, as I passed by the kitchen, I heard her on a video call, I swear. I live with 2 toddlers and a grandma. I'm basically running a daycare. Laughter followed. I wasn't supposed to hear that. But I did. And it stayed. The house got colder. Not the temperature though. Sierra liked to set the thermostat to Arctic tundra, but the air between us. Nathan started sighing when I asked questions. One evening, I mentioned installing a small shelf in the laundry room for my things. He rubbed his temples and muttered, "Can we not add clutter right now?" Mom, I smiled. Said nothing. But the smile hurt that time. I kept doing what I could. Wiping counters. Folding towels, no one asked me to. Cooking dinner even when they said they'd already eaten. They had dinner together upstairs once, just the 2 of them, while I sat downstairs and listened to the ceiling creak. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I was walking toward the kitchen one morning to make tea when I heard them, Nathan and Sierra, talking in low voices just around the corner. "She won't leave if we keep being nice," Nathan said. His voice was calm, calculated. Sierra replied, her tone sharper, colder. "She won't sign her part over unless she feels unwanted. We have to make it uncomfortable. She'll go on her own." I froze. Not out of shock. Not even heartbreak. But out of something deeper, a kind of stillness that happens when you realize you've been reclassified. Not mother. Not helper. But obstacle. Inconvenience. A problem to solve. I looked up at the wallpaper, light blue with little gray branches. I'd helped pick it out 6 days ago. They had asked for my opinion. I stared at those branches. And for a moment, I couldn't tell if they were climbing or breaking. That night, I made chicken parmesan. Nathan's favorite. They didn't come down. Sierra texted. Already ate. Nathan stayed upstairs. Something about emails. So I sat alone at the table. 1 plate. 1 fork. 1 napkin. And I ate slowly. Deliberately. Not because I was hungry, but because I needed to feel what it meant to be present. To say I was here, even if no one else seemed to notice anymore. It was a Thursday. The kind of Florida morning where the humidity clings to your skin before the sun even rises. I was in the kitchen washing strawberries, humming to myself, when I heard footsteps slow, deliberate. Sierra walked in first, arms folded tight across her chest. Her expression was neutral. Too neutral. "Emma," she said. Not Mom. Not even M. Just Emma. She paused, like she was choosing her words from a script. "We've been talking, and we think it's time you looked for something more permanent. Just your own space. You know, for your comfort." Her voice tried to sound sweet, but the subtext was razor sharp. I stood still, holding a dripping strawberry in my hand. The water had stopped running, but it felt like everything around me was still moving. Distantly, I heard Nathan's footsteps behind her. He entered the room with a mug of coffee in hand. Like this was a perfectly normal Tuesday task. "We just don't have space for you anymore." "Mom," he added, not meeting my eyes. "It's time." That was it. No conversation. No thank you. No apology. Just a cold transition from "you'll always have a home with us" to "you need to go." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even blink. I wiped my hands on the nearest towel, turned to them both, and smiled. Not the kind of smile that says it's okay or "I forgive you." Just stillness. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll be out by tonight." Sierra blinked like she wasn't expecting it to be that easy. Nathan nodded like he'd just checked off an item on a chore list. "Thanks, Mom," he mumbled, already turning away. I walked back to my room, my glorified storage closet with a bed, and closed the door behind me. Everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases. I folded each piece of clothing neatly. I tucked the framed photo of Richard into the side pocket, and finally reached for the red folder I had kept hidden at the bottom of my bag since I moved in. It contained the deed to the house. My name, Emma Green. Listed clearly. Co-owner. 48% equity. Signed. Notarized. Filed. The moment Richard's life insurance came through, I had insisted on legal documentation. Not because I didn't trust Nathan, but because Richard had always taught me love with your whole heart, but protect your future with your whole mind. They didn't know I still had the folder. They didn't know I'd booked a motel room 3 days ago. Just in case. They didn't know I was already halfway out the door emotionally, long before they asked me to leave. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I ordered a cab, loaded my suitcases, slid into the back seat, and didn't look back at the white stucco house with the stone-trimmed porch and the brand-new security system. It was no longer mine, not in spirit. But legally, it was still half mine. And what they didn't realize yet was that by morning, the dream home they'd tried to make me disappear from would become the very thing they'd lose entirely. They wanted me out. They got their wish. But the cost was still coming. The motel room smelled like bleach and fried onions. The kind of place that's clean enough to survive in, but not quite enough to feel safe. I sat on the stiff bed, my red folder open in front of me, the deed lying there like a silent witness. I hadn't eaten dinner, didn't feel hungry, just hollow. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry. I just felt done. The next morning, I walked to a nearby diner, one of those old Florida ones with faded menus and ceramic mugs older than the waitresses. I sipped black coffee from a chipped cup and tried to make a list in my mind. Call Social Security. Print backup copies of the deed. Look for studio apartments. And then the phone rang. Unknown number. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something in my chest whispered, "Pick up." "Hello, Miss Green, this is Brad Reynolds with First Horizon Lending. I'm calling regarding your co-ownership of the property at 311 Bayview Lane in Tampa." I straightened in my seat. "Yes, that's my former residence." "Is something wrong?" Brad cleared his throat. "There's been a loan default. Mr. Nathan Green took out a business loan totaling $85. Zero using the property as collateral. Payments haven't been made in over 4 months. We've issued 3 formal notices. Foreclosure proceedings are scheduled to begin this Friday." For a moment, the world didn't spin. It froze. Nathan, the boy I nursed through pneumonia, the man who called me his hero in his wedding toast, he had mortgaged our home behind my back and let me walk away as if I never mattered. I closed my eyes and breathed in through my nose. "And what are my options?" Brad explained the details. I could pay off the loan and stop the foreclosure. I could release my ownership and let the house go. Or I could do nothing and let the system move forward. I thanked him, asked him to email the documents, and hung up. Back in the motel lobby, I printed out the forms. I signed every page slowly, with the same blue pen I'd used to sign Nathan's first permission slip in elementary school. This time, I wasn't giving permission. I was giving closure. An hour later, Brad called to confirm receipt. "Foreclosure will move forward," he said politely. "Thank you, Miss Green." I didn't reply, just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Then I turned off my phone, pulled the curtains in my room, and sat on the bed, somewhere across town. Nathan and Sierra were sipping smoothies, planning their nursery, scrolling Instagram. They didn't know that the fuse had already been lit. And this time, I wasn't the one about to be erased. Later that evening, I walked to the corner store and bought crackers, instant coffee, and a small bottle of wine. Back in my room, I toasted myself not out of revenge, not out of victory, but because, for the first time in a long time, I had chosen myself. Not because someone begged me, not because it was expected, but because I finally understood sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. It started with a text. "Nathan, did you cancel something with the house? We just got a weird letter from the lender." I didn't respond. 3 hours later, another ping. "Nathan, there's a notice on the door. Call me." Still, I said nothing. At 3:17 p.m., Sierra finally texted Sierra Emma. "Please, we're confused. Just tell us what's going on." But I wasn't confused. They were, and I wasn't cruel. I was protecting what little peace I had left. Because if I heard one more fake apology, one more carefully curated excuse, I might forget that silence had become my sharpest weapon. The foreclosure notice came faster than I expected. Less than 48 hours after I signed the release, the sheriff's office taped a bright orange sheet of paper to the front door of 311 Bayview Lane. I didn't have to be there to see it. Sierra posted about it herself in the Palm Grove neighborhood Facebook group. "Urgent. Our home is being targeted in a scam. If anyone has connections to real estate attorneys, please DM us ASAP. We are terrified and blindsided." The irony, it made me laugh. For the first time in days, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, sipping stale motel coffee and scrolling through her public meltdown. The comments came fast. "Oh no. Sierra, what happened? Wasn't that house a gift from your husband's mom? You guys were doing so well. How could this happen?" She replied to every single one, like a politician in crisis mode. Never admitting, only spinning. We were betrayed by someone we trusted, someone who should have protected us. That's when the shift happened. From comedy to something darker. My phone began lighting up with texts from people I hadn't heard from in years, cousins, church friends, even Richard's sister in Oregon. "Emma, what's going on? Did you really do something to the house Sierra had framed me?" Not just privately, publicly, deliberately. She didn't mention the $195. Zero, I gave. She didn't mention the legal documents I had signed in good faith. She didn't mention the way they shoved me out like a used folding chair. No, she played the victim. She leaned on her image, soft-spoken, pregnant, innocent. And Nathan, he added fuel to the fire. He posted a photo of the two of us from when he was 5, me holding an ice cream cone. Show him beaming in a Ninja Turtles t-shirt and captioned it, "It's hard when the people who raised you end up hurting you the most." No tags, no names, just enough to let their audience connect the dots. I thought about posting the truth. Screenshots, deeds, bank statements. But then I remembered what Richard used to say, "Don't wrestle with pigs. You'll both get dirty and they'll enjoy it." So I stayed still. I stayed silent. Until the call came. It was Officer Reeves from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. His tone was gentle, almost apologetic. "Miss Green, just a courtesy call. We've scheduled a formal lockout at the Bayview Lane property this Friday at 10:00 a.m. You're not required to attend, since you've already signed off, but as a listed co-owner, we wanted to notify you. Thank you." I said, and meant it. That night, I lay in bed and imagined it Nathan in sweatpants, Sierra on the porch, their lives in garbage bags by the curb. And I didn't feel triumphant. Just still. Because they had made their choices. Now, they were living with them. Friday came quietly. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't need to. At 10:42 a.m., my phone buzzed with a voicemail. No caller ID. I sat on the motel bed and listened. Slowly, twice. It was Nathan. His voice was tight, low, and furious. I don't know what you did, but we're out. Gone. You ruined us. Mom, I hope you're happy. That was it. No apology. No accountability. No ownership. Just blame. I placed the phone on the nightstand, turned it face down, and stared at the ceiling. A few hours later, a longer message came in, this time from Sierra. If you wanted to hurt us, congrats. We're being evicted. I just hope you sleep well tonight. You destroyed your family. That word, family, clung to my ribs like a bruise. As if it had only ever belonged to them. As if my name had been scratched off the label when it no longer served their narrative. I took a deep breath, walked to the corner store, and bought a small spiral notebook. On the first page, I wrote today. They lost everything. And I found my silence. Then I turned the page and kept writing. But silence doesn't last forever. 2 days later, Sierra posted a 10-slide Instagram story titled, "When Family Betrays You," set against pastel pink backgrounds with cursive quotes and stock images of broken hearts. Each frame twisted the story. We opened our home to someone in grief. We were met with control and manipulation. This is what elder abuse looks like. The comments rolled in. You're so brave for sharing this. Some people just want to control their kids forever. Boundaries matter. Proud of you. Sierra. I scrolled in silence until I saw the one that stopped me cold. Nathan's comment, "You did everything right. You protected our future." She shows destruction. I stared at it for a long time, not because it hurt, but because I couldn't believe the ease with which he lied. This was the same boy who once cried for a whole hour after I threw away his favorite cereal box. The boy who used to crawl into my bed after a nightmare and whisper, "Don't leave." Now, he was rewriting the story for strangers who didn't know me, who never would, but would judge anyway. Still, I said nothing. Until the morning a knock came on my motel room door. I hesitated. Years of instinct taught me not every knock was worth opening for. But I did. A woman in her mid-50s stood there, clipboard under one arm, a quiet strength in her eyes. "Miss Green?" she asked. "I'm Doreen. I work with the city's housing board. I saw the posts. I just wanted to hear your side." We sat in the lobby downstairs, next to a humming vending machine and a fake potted plant. I told her everything. Not as a victim. Not as a villain. Just as a woman who gave too much and was punished for staying too long. She didn't interrupt. Didn't take notes. She just listened. When I finished, she handed me her card. "If you're ready to move forward to something of your own, I have some strings I can pull." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't drink wine or replay old voicemails. I simply opened my notebook and wrote, "Sometimes. The loudest truth is the one you don't shout." The email arrived just after breakfast. Subject line, "Senior Housing Application. Approved." I stared at it for a moment before clicking. It felt almost unreal. Like the first breeze after a long, stifling storm. Inside was a note from Doreen Emma. "There's a 2-bedroom unit available in Clearwater. Ocean breeze. 2nd floor. Affordable. Move-in date Friday. Let me know if it feels right. D. I opened the attached listing. White walls. Big windows. A tiny porch overlooking a courtyard with palm trees. The rent was just under my budget. The unit was part of a retirement community for veterans, teachers, and widows. People like me. People rebuilding. I didn't think. I replied with one word, yes. Later that day, I walked to the housing board office and found Doreen at her desk, sipping lukewarm coffee from a mug that said, "One day at a time." She smiled when she saw me. "I want to move on," I told her. "Not just from them, from all of it." She didn't say, "I'm proud of you," or "You're doing the right thing." She just nodded and slid the keys across the table, like someone handing over the first chapter of a new book. By Thursday, I had packed everything I needed into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. My red folder, the framed photo of Richard, a paperback novel I still hadn't finished, and a new ceramic mug I bought at a thrift store that read "Peace Lives Here." I arrived at the condo just before sunset. It was smaller than I imagined, but somehow brighter. The sunlight poured across the hardwood floors like it had been waiting for someone to come home. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and stood for a full minute, just breathing. No footsteps upstairs. No forced smiles. No filtered apologies. Just space. My space. The movers were running late, so I unpacked the essentials first. Set the photo of Richard on the kitchen counter. Placed the red folder in the drawer under the sink. Then I made a cup of tea using the old electric kettle that came with the unit and walked onto the porch. The ocean wasn't visible, but I could hear it, and somehow that was enough. That night, I slept with the window cracked open. The breeze carried the soft hum of waves, distant seagulls, and laughter from a neighbor's television. But more than anything, it carried stillness. Not the kind I used to dread in my old house. This kind was earned, oh Ned. The next morning, I walked to the local cafe and bought a blueberry muffin and a real cup of coffee. The barista called me ma'am, but not in a condescending way, just polite. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody asked why I was alone. And that, too, was enough. Later that day, I stopped by the community center and signed up for a painting class. The instructor's name was Walter. He wore suspenders and smelled faintly like cinnamon. He welcomed me with a smile and said, "You look like someone with a lot of stories to tell." I smiled back. "Maybe," I said, "but not today." Because that day wasn't about stories, it was about silence. And what it means when it finally belongs to you? It came on a Wednesday, tucked inside a stack of forwarded motel mail, squeezed between a funeral home flyer and a coupon for frozen yogurt. A plain white envelope. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. Instantly. It was from Nathan. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. No closing. Just 4 short lines in his familiar Wunschespide Nennesliza nation. Once loved. Now, distant scrawl. I know I can't undo what I did. I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to know I'm trying. I named her Emily Emma Green. I read it once. Then again. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the same drawer where I kept the deed to the house, now void, and the photo of Richard that had followed me through every chapter of grief. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. That evening, I walked down to the beach alone. The boardwalk was quiet, the waves folding into the shore like exhaled prayers. I slipped off my sandals and stepped into the sand. still warm from the day's heat. I thought about Emily, the baby with my name, but not my story. A child born into the ashes of someone else's decisions. And I thought about Nathan, not the man who chose silence and betrayal, but the little boy who once clutched my hand in the dark, who once begged me to stay 5 more minutes at bedtime. That boy was gone, and I had finally stopped chasing his shadow. As the breeze pulled softly at my hair and the tide reached toward my toes, I whispered a sentence into the wind. Not for Nathan. Not for Sierra. Not even for Emily. Just for me. No space here either. Goodbye. Later that night, I updated my will. Nathan's name was already gone. Instead, I split my estate small but mine between a local domestic violence shelter, a literacy foundation for underserved schools, and the animal rescue where I'd once volunteered. Bottle feeding abandoned kittens. I wrote one final instruction to my attorney. If they ever contest it, send everything. All the documents. All the receipts. Publicly. I didn't wait for a response. I knew he'd understand it. The last message came on a Sunday morning, a number I didn't recognize but I didn't need to. Sierra. 4 words. We lost everything. Congrats. I didn't reply. Not because I was vindictive. Not because I didn't feel something, but because some messages are only meant to echo empty and fading into the distance. Instead, I made tea, opened a book, watered the tiny succulent that sat in my kitchen window, because I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. Epilogue. If you're still listening, maybe you've given everything your love, your savings, your soul to people who never said thank you. Maybe you've stayed in rooms where your presence felt like an inconvenience. Maybe you've believed that kindness means silence. Let me tell you the truth. I had to learn the hard way. Peace that costs your dignity is not peace at all. Love that requires your erasure is not love. And family, real family, makes space for you, even when you have nothing left to give. So if you're sitting in the quiet now, doubting your worth, wondering if you're wrong for walking away, you're not. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to rebuild. Even if no one claps for you, you are allowed to be the hero of your own story. Like Emma, you deserve a life where you're not just tolerated, you're treasured. So go ahead. Make space for yourself. Because you are worth it.